Well, you folks have spoken. We decided to make a part 2 of our Pokemon Dragon Ball crossover when we decided to choose teams of pocket monsters for Goku and his friends and enemies. Not to mention it actually gives Hab the chance to flex his Pokemon muscles. There most likely will be a part 3 too, as there are a lot of characters to cover, so let's continue. Let's give love to our human characters, yeah? The Villains Edition would be an easy pick, but we're gonna save that for next time, and now we're going to be focusing on some of the more underrated characters that could do with a little bit of love, as a lot of them have very distinct personalities if you actually give them the time of day that could vibe very well with a lot of Pokemon, starting, of course, with a Krill Dog. And for him to be the #1 human heir to the Turtle School tradition, we would give him the most traditional turtle Pokemon there is, which is Blastoise, obviously. I don't think this calls for a lot of explanation, really. And notice how this bad boy would have a type advantage against Goku's Infernape, which, of course, would not bother the Saiyan. The next one is a new one, a weird little creature. Well, a group of creatures called Mousehold. They look harmless on first glance, but they are deceptively strong, with a very powerful attack called Population Bomb. Yeah, that is a thing. Also, they come in 2 varieties, the family of 4 and the family of 3, with the family of 3 being the rarer one. Obviously, the trio goes to the Krill Dog to show his main superpower, having a functional family unit, of course. Well, unless you read the manga. Also, we think Krillin should have either Throw or Sork. They just work, you know, martial arts, etc. They may not be the most popular creatures out there, but there is something about those boys that really brings our favorite ex-monk to mind. We would now actually go with Throw, just because of the color scheme and overall silhouette. The next choice should be something related to his signature Solar Flare times 100. Whilst the original is a Crane School ability and an absolute favorite amongst the Dragon team, we do think that Krillin upgraded it to the point where it really should be reflected in his Pokemon team. And since his team is already a little bit underdogish, we decided to give him a Heliolisk. This sassy lizard seems to fit Krill Dog quite nicely, and a normal electric type is an interesting choice to round up his team. The next one should reflect on Krillin's past as a monk, and I think we do have a perfect fit for that. The pseudo-legendary Komo-o, which is partially based on Kakara, a monk staff, the tail in particular, and oh yes, we gave him a pseudo. He deserves it. Maybe that would help him catch up that blasted car in the manga. We're still salty about that. To round this up, Hisuian and Growlithe. A regular Growlithe are often seen with police-themed characters within the Pokemon franchise, so it makes absolute sense here, because we do know what Krill Dog's current job is, so it absolutely fits. The Hisuian variety was more of a guard dog sort of thing, but we feel that this fits with Krillin's dual monk-cop identity. It even fits as a family pet, which made us decide not to give him an Arcanine, but instead something a little bit more unevolved and cuddly. We do think that overall, this team came up pretty nicely. And next, let's go with Yamcha. And there are, of course, quite a few wolf-like Pokemon out there that could be his ace. We're not going to give him the legendary Zacian or Zamazenta or anything like that. We do love Yamcha, but that would be, honestly, a bit of overkill. Instead, most of you probably know what it's going to be, his main theme. That's right, Lycanroc. But which one, you ask? Well, we decided on the Midnight form, as this bipedal werewolf-like version really does work quite well with our Desert Bandit. Another easy pick for Yamcha's team would be Mightyena. I know, it's technically a hyena and not a wolf, but it does also share some wolf-like traits which would be close enough, and it makes us think about something, about our boy with the scar. Also, they are coordinated in packs and are fiercely loyal toward their trainers, provided they are skilled, of course, so it's a win-win situation here. And considering how loyal Yamcha is when he's waiting for the phone call to join Team Universe 7 for the Tournament of Power, I think this works. The next one is interesting, as you would not normally associate Yamcha with a crab Pokemon, but with a cloth waiting on a cliff only to get a drop on its prey? Feels like a very cool and fitting choice for somebody like Yamcha, who has been a bandit in his past life. I don't know, but this land crustacean had me vibing with Yamcha very hard and worked as a nice memo to his old life. Also, to further tie in his team with his place of origin, we should give him a cactus Pokemon. And whilst we have the likes of the Cacnea line and Maractus to choose from, we do think that the Prior works just because of Cacturn. It fits slightly better, as his roguish disposition kind of blends well with Yamcha being a bandit. Another member of his team should also pay homage to his baseball career, which is tricky as there are no real baseball-type Pokemon exactly, but the 5th generation had its big stadium in Nimbasa City, and on said stadium, there were various sport-themed trainers up there. We looked through the Pokemon they have used, and we figured out a perfect pitch for Yamcha, pun not intended, would be Marowak. Not only is the bone it's holding kind of like a baseball bat, but also the orphan backstory, it kind of fits very well with the fact that he was all alone in the desert. Lastly, a Pokemon that would reference Poir. As you know, there are tons of Pokemon cats in the world that we actually see amongst this anime and manga series. But none feels like an equivalent to his shape-shifting friend. Yeah, we know Mew can transform as well, but come on. We decided to give him Purloin. Not only just like Cacturn, it's a bit roguish, but it also cements Yamcha as this dark-type specialist, which isn't that weird if you sit down and think. But I mean, okay, a dark rock trainer with 1 ground type. Weird and not so weird at the same time. The next one is going to be Launch, because we should give some love to our girl. And our ace could be just one thing, Morpeko. This little dark electric type creature is really cute as long as it's not in its hangry mode. You get it? Do you see the theme? Because it's both hungry and angry. We do feel like Morpeko is a nice little analogy to both forms of Launch. Something that we will try and demonstrate to the rest of our team. So the next one goes to Blue Launch, something kind and nurturing. I mean, Chansey, that's an easy pick. Not quite a Blissey yet, that's due to a trainer's dual nature, but I think it's a perfect unassuming choice for a bubbly and kind nature. Also it brings luck, which would work for both personalities of Launch, if you know what I mean. The one that would not be so wholesome could be Thievel, which does really fit with the criminal aspect of the past of this character. And you can imagine that this creature would be a pretty decent partner in her schemes. And since she's running a delivery service now, who better to help her than a Delibird? This Pokemon's not really for fighting exactly, as they are famously weak and overly generous, but it is a great help in her everyday life and work. Now, we know what you're all going to say. Launch likes guns. So how much something that would show this aspect? Well, we got you covered. Octillery. Wait, what? Yeah, Gold, Silver, Beta, Remoraid, and Octillery were based on a gun and a tank. They looked more militaristic, but Game Freak toned them down, obviously, which gave the weird case of a fish randomly evolving into an octopus. As you can see, it made more sense back then. But Octillery's signature move, Octazooka, will probably be helpful in opening various bank vaults for Blonde Launch. And lastly, something new from Gen 9, the engine of the Pokemon Revavroom, which may double down as a gateway vehicle or a delivery minicar. It has uses for both launches, and we kinda love it. And after we tackled Launch, we can now cover, of course, Tenshinhan. This is going to be a fun one, we promise. So Tenshinhan is a pretty solitary type if you don't count Chaozu being there. He also spent his fair share of life exploring the world. It brings the evolution of the Hisuian Sneasel to mind, called Sneasler. It also has that assassin vibe too, which hints at his past with the Crane School. The fighting poison type feels like a good fit for Tenshinhan's starting point. Now the next one, it's pretty easy, I mean come on. Machamp. You folks know we were gonna go there. It's Tenshinhan, the legendary forearms. It's a very iconic moment for him. Also, Tenshinhan has his iconic Tri-Beam attack, which brings Tri-Attack from Pokemon to mind. There are multiple creatures that could learn this technique, but we decided to go with Dodrio, as it is kind of underrated. And you can imagine our hero, and Chaozu, riding on its back through the desert and many a wasteland. It's just got that sense that it would work, you know? Also, there aren't that many three-eyed Pokemon out there. Gengar gains an extra one in his Mega Evolution, but it doesn't exactly scream Tenshinhan. But we do feel that Sigilyph has this mystical feel about it that kind of works well with Tenshinhan's personality. It's a bit off-brand, but we do feel that in the end, it provides some really nice variety. And you know what? Let's throw in an Alakazam for good measure. Tenshinhan will probably Mega Evolve it too, to make it stronger and give it the Wise Sage angle. Another iconic thing for Tenshinhan would be his multi-form technique, and the closest we have to that in Pokemon would be a double team technique. Now, plenty of Pokemon do learn that attack, and it's not really iconic to any of them exactly, so we decided to drop the angle, sadly. Not all the character traits translate well between the franchises, so we ended up with something fitting with Siglif's theming and kind of vibing with Tenshinhan. Claydol. I don't know what it is about Tenshinhan, maybe the fact that we know so little about his past, but he kind of works with those mysterious ancient species of Pokemon that we don't really know much about. Maybe this isn't the choice that we have the strongest conviction in, but I think it works in our minds with what little we have. Next up is Roshi, and right off the bat, Caracosta, the most ancient of the current turtle Pokemon. At least until a certain legendary will appear in the Scarlet and Violet series. But Terapagos though, that would be kind of OP. And this fossil from Gen 5 just makes sense, I suppose. Prehistoric turtle? Prehistoric man? Pretty badass. I can get behind that. Also, Drampa, a wizened old dragon. It even resembles Roshi a little bit, which is an added bonus. I mean, look at him, living his best grandpa life. Roshi lives in Kame House on his little tropical island, with all of those little palm trees scattered about it. I mean, there is a pretty prominent palm tree Pokemon that has actually sprung to my mind, which really fits with his chill nature, and could easily just chill out with the rest of the palm trees. You know what we're talking about. We are of course talking about Alolan Executor. We also need to give him a fighting type, and the one that would work pretty well would be Mienshao. It does feel like a skilled martial artist, and is one of the main Pokemon used by Master Mustard, who does have some things in common with Roshi. Luckily not all of them. Another fun nod to some of Roshi's antics would be Lunatone. You know, because of the moon. Yeah, come on, you know what we're getting at here. What should we give him as his last Pokemon? There are so many choices that would be wrong by being right, if you catch my drift. Oh, fine, we'll give him a Lopunny. But not in a creepy way, folks, not in a creepy way. I see the kind of face you're making after hearing it. Thinking, hey Goku, I caught a little Pokemon. You know what a little Pokemon I caught? Don't worry, he's not like the Joker. But we do know that Roshi does like, bunnies. Okay, who's gonna round up today's edition? How about, Chi-Chi. As the Princess of Fire Mountain, she should have a Fire-type ace. We think that Cruel Edge might be an interesting choice. Whilst nowadays she doesn't really fight all that much, we can imagine her winding up with a Cruel Edge that evolved over time as she grew older. The next one would be a female Indeedee, as she would have been a great help around the house. With her family being the way it is, Chi-Chi could do with any sort of help with everyday chores and keeping their rowdy boys in line. Still, leaving with the Saiyans should provide her with a monkey or ape type Pokemon that she would be able to tame with her strict nature. I think an Apom would be a good choice. Whilst it's true that the mischievous disposition of this Pokemon would clash with Chi-Chi at times, I think she would be able to train it enough to make it more compliant. Now, the most motherly Pokemon that we know would be, of course, Kangaskhan, and we kind of agree that it would fit thematically in a perfect way. Not only could it be a pretty strong and fierce Pokemon if its child's in danger, but also the Mega Evolution? Oh, that can symbolize her coming to terms that at least Gohan has grown to become a person in his own right, and being quite formidable. Now, I don't know why, but I can imagine Chi-Chi finding a Politegeist living in one of the old porcelain sets. She would of course claim that this is the antique form, but most likely it'll be a phony one. Still, an interesting addition. Lastly, as Chi-Chi is a practical person, she would keep another Pokemon that would be helpful in the household, Miltank. And access to milk is quite a formidable threat and very useful, if we were to believe the childhood traumas related to Whitney. Whew. Who would have thought that Chi-Chi would have ended up with a normal ghost selection? That's all the choices for today, but fear not. Part 3 with the villains and antagonists will be coming soon. And as for you all waiting for Lucario's debut, fear not. We purposely avoided giving it to Goku, as it was too obvious. But we do have a candidate for that particular Pokemon, and we will reveal in the future. But we'll see you in the next video. Catch you later!